White woman takes black CEO's seat, then discovers he owns the entire airline. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we're glad you're here. Now, back to this story. That's my seat. Move. The words hit like a slap across the quiet cabin, sharp and deliberate. Victoria Hale didn't whisper. She declared it, her voice cutting through first class with the confidence of someone used to being obeyed. She sat poised in a black dress that hugged her frame, legs crossed, sunglasses angled just so, a Louis Vuitton bag claiming its own space on the armrest. Regal, polished, and utterly dismissive. The man she targeted paused mid-aisle. Marcus Carter, 6'2", crisp white dress shirt stretched across broad shoulders, diamond watch flashing under the LED glow. Nothing in his hands but a boarding pass and unshakable calm. Passengers turned. Some leaned forward, curious. Others pretended not to watch but couldn't look away. Victoria tilted her chin, lips curving in a smile that didn't reach her eyes. First class isn't for everyone, sweetheart. You might be more comfortable in the back. Marcus didn't answer. His gaze, steady and unreadable, lingered on her for a beat too long. Then, with the slow precision of a man who knew his ground, he extended the boarding pass to the attendant hovering nearby. The ticket was valid. The name was clear. Yet doubt still flickered across the attendant's face. "Sir," she said, cautious but firm, "economy is further down the cabin." The room shifted. The hush wasn't silence, it was judgment filling the air. People in tailored suits and pearl necklaces glanced over as if the outcome were already decided. Victoria leaned back in the seat, pulling her sunglasses down just enough to reveal eyes gleaming with superiority. "See? Even they know. That ticket of yours won't work here." Marcus adjusted his cuff, the diamond on his wrist igniting under the light. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't flinch. His silence weighed more than her words, and that silence began to spread. A teenager whispered to his mother. A businessman frowned at his tablet. The cabin, wide and bright, no longer felt like luxury. It felt like a stage. The opening act of a clash that would unravel the balance of this flight and expose who truly held the power at 30,000 feet. Marcus Carter didn't move. He stood there in the wide, sunlit cabin, his white shirt crisp against the soft leather seats, the diamond watch on his wrist catching a shard of light every time he adjusted his sleeve. He didn't need to announce himself. His presence did the talking. The attendant, still holding his boarding pass, hesitated. The green check from the scanner was still fresh in her mind, but her eyes flicked to Victoria, perfect hair, polished smile, legs crossed like she owned the row. Victoria lifted a manicured hand and gave a casual shrug, as if to say case closed. Passengers shifted uncomfortably. A businessman 2 seats away muttered under his breath, but not loud enough to interfere. An older woman with silver hair adjusted her glasses and whispered to her husband, "He showed the ticket. Why are they still questioning him?" Marcus finally spoke, his voice steady and low. "Run my name." The words carried weight. He wasn't pleading. He wasn't asking. He was instructing. But the attendant shook her head, tone clipped. "It's not necessary, sir. This area is restricted." Victoria smirked, leaning back into the plush leather as if settling deeper into her lie. "See? Even she agrees. You don't belong here." Marcus glanced at the bag she'd placed on the armrest of the seat, his seat, and for a split second, memory cut through the calm. 20 years earlier, in another first-class lounge, a younger Marcus had been told the same thing. Different face, same words. "You don't belong here." Back then, he was 25, fresh out of grad school, suit too cheap, wallet too thin. They laughed at him then. He let it go. He never forgot. Now, 2 decades later, standing on an airline he partially owned, the words landed like an echo, but this time, he wasn't the man being dismissed. He was the man holding the future of everyone in that cabin. He adjusted his cuff again, voice calm as stone. "Check the ticket again." The attendant shifted uneasily. Behind her, a younger crew member, barely in training, looked up from the galley, her brows knit together, uncertainty in her eyes. She had seen the scan flash green. She had seen his ID. She knew something was wrong. But before she could speak, Victoria leaned forward, sunglasses lowered just enough to show the gleam of arrogance. Security should escort him out before this gets embarrassing. The hush in the cabin deepened. Phones tilted ever so slightly, passengers pretending not to record. The balance was shifting, subtle but unstoppable. Marcus remained silent, because sometimes silence isn't weakness. Sometimes it's the storm before the reckoning. The attendant's hesitation didn't last. She placed the boarding pass back in Marcus's hand with a practiced firmness, as if finalizing a decision she already regretted. "Sir, this seat has been reassigned. Please make your way to economy." Her words landed heavier than the hum of the engines. Victoria seized the moment, sliding her sunglasses fully down her nose, lips curving into a slow, triumphant smile. "There you have it. Even the crew knows. This is first class, darling, not open seating." Then, with a flick of her manicured fingers, she pushed Marcus's leather bag off the empty seat beside her. It tumbled into the aisle with a dull thud. Gasps rose from the cabin like sparks off dry wood. A teenager whispered, "Did she just?" while his mother pressed a hand to his arm, shushing him. The older woman who had spoken earlier now shook her head openly, voice sharp enough to be heard across the row. That was unnecessary. But Victoria didn't care. She leaned back, adjusting the hem of her black dress as if she had restored order to the universe. Scammers always try to sneak their way in. Better to deal with it quickly. Marcus bent down, picked up his bag, and set it back on the seat with deliberate calm. His diamond watch caught the sunlight again, flashing like a warning signal. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't even look at her. Instead, he slid into the seat across the aisle, posture straight, eyes steady on the attendant. "Run my name," he said again, firmer this time. The young trainee in the galley shifted, her lips parting. She had seen the scan flash green. She knew the system didn't lie. But before she could speak, her supervisor shot her a glare that froze her in place. Victoria chuckled softly, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Look at him still pretending. I've seen this before. They flash a ticket, make a scene, and hope no one checks the details. It's pathetic." Her words rolled through the cabin like poison, and for a moment it seemed the room might bend entirely to her narrative. Phones tilted again, catching angles of Marcus sitting tall, silent, the picture of composure. And that silence, it was no longer the quiet of dismissal. It was the silence of a man holding back a storm, waiting for the exact second to let it break. Marcus didn't respond to the insult. He sat upright, hands folded neatly on his lap, his white shirt crisp against the leather. The diamond watch on his wrist caught another shard of light, pulsing like a heartbeat in the silence. He didn't flinch. He didn't argue. His restraint unsettled the cabin more than if he'd shouted. Victoria expected anger. She wanted it, needed it to justify her own arrogance. But Marcus gave her nothing. The young trainee in the galley shifted again, unable to keep quiet this time. She stepped forward, voice soft but clear. "I saw his scan. It cleared. His name is valid in the system." Heads turned. The supervisor shot her a glare so sharp it nearly cut the air. "That's enough," she snapped. "Stay in your lane." Victoria let out a laugh, cold and elegant, like crystal breaking. "You see, even the junior ones get confused. It's adorable, really, but rules are rules. This seat isn't his." The older woman with silver hair folded her arms across her chest, voice steady now. "I don't think the problem is confusion. I think the problem is you not listening." Passengers stirred. A man in a tailored suit whispered into his phone, clearly recording now. Another woman angled her device higher, lens locked on Victoria. Marcus finally spoke, voice low, resonant, carrying without force. "Silence doesn't mean weakness." The words hung in the bright cabin like smoke, drifting into every ear. Victoria froze for half a beat, then waved a dismissive hand. "Cute line. Doesn't change the fact you're in the wrong place." But her confidence didn't land the same way it had minutes earlier. Something had shifted. The air in the cabin was charged, thick with judgment not directed at Marcus, but at her. The trainee's voice trembled, but she didn't back down. "He has the seat. I saw the name. I won't pretend otherwise." That declaration drew a few nods from the passengers, subtle but visible. Phones stayed up, every angle captured. Marcus didn't smile. He didn't lean back. He simply held his gaze on the attendant, waiting. And in that waiting, the balance of the cabin began to tip away from the arrogance of one woman toward the quiet authority of a man who hadn't yet revealed who he truly was. The silence in the cabin cracked when a voice from 2 rows back cut through. "She's right. I saw the scanner flash green, too." It was a man in his 40s, business casual, laptop still open on his tray. He hadn't looked up once since boarding, but now his eyes were fixed on Marcus. "He's not lying. That ticket was valid. Murmurs rippled through first class. A woman clutching a silk scarf leaned toward her seatmate. "This is uncomfortable," she whispered, but her phone was angled higher now, recording everything. Victoria's smirk faltered, but only for a breath. She leaned forward, voice sharp enough to slice the room. "Strangers defending him doesn't change protocol. This seat is mine. End of story." Marcus remained still, his gaze steady, his voice calm as stone. End of the story hasn't been written yet. The words landed heavy, and for the first time Victoria shifted, crossing her legs the other way, gripping the armrest as if to steady her control. The supervisor attendant cleared her throat, her voice louder than before, almost defensive. "Sir, I'll ask you again, please return to economy or we'll call security." Phones rose higher. Passengers weren't pretending anymore. They were documenting. A teenager whispered into his camera, "This is happening live. First-class drama at 30,000 feet." The young trainee spoke up again, louder this time, braver. "He belongs here. It's in the system." Victoria snapped her head around, eyes narrowing. "Watch yourself. People lose jobs for less." But the trainee didn't back down. "Better to lose a job than lose your dignity." The cabin exhaled a subtle shift, a wave of unspoken agreement. For the first time, Victoria wasn't the center of gravity. Marcus was. He adjusted his cuff, the diamond watch flashing like a signal. His voice carried steady and low. "Every word, every action, you're making a record. One you won't be able to erase." The businessman with the laptop muttered, "He's right. This doesn't look good." Victoria rolled her eyes, but her laugh came brittle this time, thin at the edges. "Please, you're all being fooled. It's pathetic." But her arrogance no longer filled the room. The phones did. The whispers did. And Marcus, without raising his voice, without moving from his seat, commanded the space. What had started as her performance was becoming his stage. The supervisor's patience snapped. Her voice rose over the low murmur of the cabin, firm and final. "Enough. Sir, your boarding pass is not valid for this section. You need to leave now before we escalate further." The words landed like a gavel strike. She didn't just question Marcus's place, she erased it outright. Victoria leaned back with a victorious grin, her red lips curling into satisfaction. "Finally, someone with authority. Do us all a favor and remove him. Some people just don't know their place." The cabin stiffened. Conversations died mid-sentence. What had been whispers now turned into open stares. Every passenger was watching. Every phone was rolling. Marcus didn't flinch. He sat straighter, his white shirt catching the cabin light, his diamond watch flashing like a deliberate reminder of who he was. His voice was calm, controlled, and low, but it carried through the entire section. "Careful, you're not just questioning me, you're questioning the system you work for." A man in the corner muttered to his phone camera. "He's right. They scanned it. We all saw it." But the supervisor doubled down, her tone sharp with condescension. "Scammers use tricks all the time. A scan doesn't prove anything. The seat is reassigned. You're holding up real guests." The arrogance in her voice rippled across the room like static. Victoria folded her arms, nodding along, playing judge and jury. "Told you. Fraud." The young trainee finally broke, her voice cutting through, strong this time. "Stop. His name cleared in the system. I checked it myself. You can't just dismiss him because you don't like how he looks." Gasps spread like wildfire. A few passengers clapped quietly, the sound hesitant but real. Marcus's eyes didn't leave the supervisor. He didn't blink. He simply said, with deliberate calm, "You're making the worst mistake of your professional life." Phones zoomed closer. Fingers tapped faster. The businessman with the laptop muttered, "This is going viral before we land." Victoria scoffed, but the edge in her voice betrayed her. "Oh, please, empty threats. He'll be gone in 5 minutes. But no one was laughing with her now. The balance had shifted. The crew didn't realize it yet, but the cabin had. And Marcus Carter, silent, steady, unshaken, sat in the center of it all, letting them dig the hole deeper with every word. The supervisor didn't stop at words. She snapped her fingers toward a junior flight attendant standing near the galley. "Collect his things. We'll secure them until security boards in Denver." The order sliced through the cabin like a blade. Gasps followed. A hush clamped down as the young attendant hesitated, eyes flicking between Marcus and her superior. Victoria's laugh rang out sharp and triumphant. "Finally, Treat him like what he is, a fraud trying to steal what doesn't belong to him. She nudged Marcus's leather bag with the toe of her heel, letting it slide closer to the aisle as if presenting it for removal. Marcus didn't move. He didn't reach for the bag. He didn't argue. His stillness was unnerving. The white shirt, pressed and perfect, the diamond watch catching the sterile cabin light, he looked less like a man cornered and more like a man waiting. The younger crew member bent down reluctantly, hands trembling as she touched the strap of Marcus's bag. A voice shot up from the back. "Hey, that's not right. You can't just take his property." It came from the businessman who had been recording the entire time. He angled his phone higher, narrating now without shame. "They're confiscating his bag after confirming his seat. Everyone can see this." Phones lifted across the cabin, a forest of glowing screens. The narrative was no longer in the crew's control, it belonged to the witnesses. Still, the supervisor pressed forward. She leaned down, close enough for Marcus to hear, but loud enough for others to catch. "If you don't comply, we'll have you escorted off this plane in front of everyone. Don't test us." "No." Victoria's smile widened, her confidence swelling in the silence. "Oh, please escort him. Make an example." And then Marcus moved, not fast, not loud, but deliberate. He reached down, took back his bag from the trembling junior attendant with one hand, and set it firmly on his lap. His gaze lifted, calm and cutting, to meet the supervisor's eyes. "You just crossed a line," he said, voice even, unshaken. The words weren't shouted. They didn't need to be. The weight of them pressed into the air, heavy enough that even Victoria blinked. In that moment, the cabin wasn't sure if it was watching a passenger being humiliated or a reckoning quietly, inexorably building. Marcus set the bag on his lap, his fingers resting lightly on the leather strap. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. He slipped one hand into his pocket and pulled out his phone, the diamond watch on his wrist flashing as the light caught it. With the same composure he had carried since stepping into the cabin, he placed a call. "Rachel," he said evenly when the line connected. His voice was low, but the hush in the cabin carried it to every row. "Initiate protocol. Log everything from this moment." The reply came sharp and immediate through his earpiece. "Understood, sir. The board will be notified. Recording has begun." The passengers shifted again, phones tilted higher. The businessman in the corner muttered into his camera. "He's calling corporate. This just got serious." The supervisor scoffed, trying to reclaim control. "Sir, putting on a show won't change the rules. You need to comply or leave." Marcus's eyes cut toward her, calm but unyielding. "The only thing being recorded here is your mistake." Victoria leaned forward, unable to resist. "What mistake? You're a con artist with a fake ticket, and now you're pretending to have some assistant on the line. It's pathetic." Rachel's voice, crisp and professional, spilled into the cabin through the speaker before Marcus could respond. "Protocol engaged. Incident logged at 10:43 a.m. Evidence secured." Gasps rippled across first class. The young trainee looked from Marcus to her supervisor, her jaw tight, as if she knew the tide had shifted but couldn't say it out loud. Marcus leaned back slightly, his voice steady. "Thank you, Rachel. Stay on standby." He ended the call, slipped the phone back into his pocket, and folded his hands on his lap once more. He looked every bit the calm center of a storm no one else yet understood. For the first time since the confrontation began, Victoria's smile faltered. She looked around the cabin, suddenly aware of the phones, the witnesses, the silence gathering against her. The supervisor straightened her blazer, her words sharp but brittle. "Empty theatrics, nothing more." But no one believed her anymore. Not after the call. Not after the way Marcus hadn't flinched. The man in the white shirt with the diamond watch had just drawn a line, and every passenger knew they were watching the beginning of something far bigger than a seat dispute. The cabin air felt heavier now, as if the altitude had dropped without warning. Phones hovered higher, lenses pointed squarely at Marcus. Every passenger could sense it. The narrative was no longer Victoria's, no longer the crew's. Marcus turned his head slowly, meeting the supervisor's eyes first. His voice was low but deliberate, each word chosen with surgical precision. "My name is Marcus Carter, majority shareholder of this airline. The seat you tried to strip from me belongs to me in more ways than one." The silence that followed was deafening. The supervisor's jaw slackened. The trainee froze mid-step, and Victoria, her sunglasses slipped down her nose as her eyes went wide for the first time. She searched his face, the diamond watch on his wrist, the calm certainty in his tone. Her confidence cracked. Passengers erupted in whispers. The businessman with the laptop whispered into his phone. He owns the airline. The man you're seeing right now actually owns it. The older woman with silver hair nodded firmly, folding her arms with satisfaction. I knew it. The way he carried himself, this was never just about a seat. Victoria tried to laugh, but it rang hollow, forced. No, you're bluffing. If you were really who you say you are, you wouldn't be here alone. You wouldn't be dressed like... Marcus cut her off, his voice as sharp as steel. Like what? Like someone you thought didn't belong? The line sliced clean through the air. Gasps spread across the cabin. Phones captured every second. The supervisor attempted to salvage control, stammering. This is outrageous. We had no way of knowing. But Marcus leaned forward, his tone calm, steady, unshakable. Ignorance is not an excuse. You didn't just insult a passenger. You disrespected the man who signs your checks. The words detonated quietly, but their impact shook the cabin harder than turbulence ever could. Victoria's face drained of color. Her confidence was gone. What sat in its place was disbelief and the first flicker of fear. And Marcus Carter, silent for so long, finally allowed the weight of who he was to settle over every person in the cabin. The balance had shifted completely. The reckoning was no longer waiting, it had arrived. The revelation hit like a shockwave. For a moment, no one breathed. Then the collapse began. The supervisor staggered back a step, her composure unraveling as whispers swelled around her. Majority shareholder? She muttered under her breath, as if saying it aloud might change the reality. The trainee looked at Marcus with wide eyes, fear mixed with relief. She had spoken up earlier, and now she knew she had been right to. Across the aisle, Victoria sat rigid, her glamorous posture melting away. Her fingers gripped the armrest so tightly her knuckles blanched. She tried to recover, to reassert control. This is absurd. You're all just falling for his performance. Do you really think he owns? But her voice was drowned out by the businessman's narration, louder now, pointed straight into his phone. You're watching this live. The man they tried to humiliate is Marcus Carter, the man who owns this airline. Passengers gasped, some clapping softly, others murmuring disbelief. A younger woman leaned across the aisle, her phone angled squarely at Victoria. You should apologize, she said firmly. Victoria's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Her face flushed red, then pale, then red again. The supervisor tried again, her tone shaky, defensive. Mr. Carter, we were only following protocol. Marcus lifted a hand, silencing her instantly. His expression was controlled, his voice calm. Protocol doesn't include insults. Protocol doesn't include theft. And it certainly doesn't include humiliating your own boss in front of paying guests. Phones captured every word. Passengers leaned in, their faces lit with the glow of their screens. For them, this was no longer just a dispute, it was justice unfolding live. The older woman with silver hair spoke again, her voice cutting through. I've flown this airline for 20 years. Never again if this is how you treat people. Her words drew nods and murmurs of agreement. A man in a navy suit added, Not after today. This is disgraceful. Victoria shrank into her seat, her designer bag now looking like nothing more than an accessory to arrogance. The supervisor clutched her tablet, searching for words she couldn't find. And Marcus? He remained composed, his silence heavier than their excuses. He had turned the cabin into a courtroom, and the verdict was clear. The collapse was complete. Their authority was gone. The only power left in the room sat in a white shirt, diamond watch glinting under the cabin lights. The cabin was silent again, but this silence wasn't born of arrogance, it was born of fear. The crew, once smug and certain, now stood frozen in the glow of dozens of raised phones. The weight of every lens was heavier than any policy manual they had ever clung to. Marcus Carter sat back in his seat, white shirt crisp, diamond watch gleaming under the cabin lights. His voice came measured, even, and absolute. Rachel, he said, tapping his earpiece once more. Her reply came instantly, clear enough for half the cabin to hear. Yes, sir, standing by. Effective immediately, Marcus continued, never raising his voice. Suspend the employment of the lead attendant on this flight. Lock her access credentials. Begin an internal review of her supervisor. Gasps tore through the rows. The supervisor blanched, clutching her tablet as if it might shield her. Mr. Carter, please, I didn't... But her badge beeped faintly, the screen flashing red as Rachel confirmed. Credentials revoked. Passengers erupted in murmurs. Phones zoomed closer. The businessman in the corner whispered into his live stream, "He just fired her, right here, in front of all of us." Marcus turned his gaze toward Victoria. She stiffened, every ounce of her glamour draining into panic. "And as for you," Marcus said, voice still calm but edged with finality, "your passenger account is terminated. You are permanently barred from this airline. Your name will not book another seat, not today, not ever." Victoria's lips parted, but the words caught in her throat. She searched the cabin for support, for anyone to echo her arrogance. None did. Not one. Phones stayed up. Faces stayed hard. "No, you can't," she stammered. But Marcus didn't need to argue. Rachel's voice cut clean across her protest. Passenger account canceled. Permanent restriction applied. Victoria's composure collapsed. Her sunglasses slipped from her hand, clattering against the aisle floor. For the first time, she looked small. The trainee stepped forward, voice clear and steady now. "It's done. I saw the system update." Applause broke from the back row, tentative at first, then stronger. A wave of claps swept through the cabin. Not for cruelty, not for spectacle, for justice. Marcus remained still, letting the sound wash over without reacting. His authority wasn't in the applause, it was in the silence he commanded when he spoke. He looked once more at the crew, then at Victoria. His final words weren't shouted. They were delivered like law. "This airline doesn't tolerate arrogance disguised as authority. Not in the air, not on the ground, not ever." The applause grew louder, echoing off the cabin walls, filling the wide, bright space with a sound that left no room for denial. And in that moment, the punishment was complete. The applause rolled through the cabin, not wild but steady, carrying the weight of vindication. Phones stayed up, recording every angle, but for once the screens weren't the center of attention. Marcus Carter was. He stood slowly, smoothing the front of his white shirt, the diamond watch on his wrist flashing under the soft cabin lights. When he spoke, the clapping softened, then stopped. His voice didn't rise, but it filled the space all the same. "You mistook silence for weakness," he said evenly, his gaze sweeping across the rows. "That was your last mistake." Passengers leaned forward, captivated. Some nodded. Some sat frozen, eyes wide. Even those who had been skeptical now understood this wasn't a stunt. This was a reckoning. Marcus looked directly at the remaining crew, his tone firm but calm. "I don't need to shout. I don't need to threaten. The facts speak louder than prejudice ever could." The young trainee's eyes glistened as she held his gaze. She had spoken up when it counted, and now she stood taller because of it. Victoria sat small in her seat, head lowered, hands folded tightly in her lap. The image of superiority she had built withered into silence. Her expensive bag, once perched like a trophy, now looked like an afterthought. Marcus turned toward her one last time, his words measured but unmistakable. "Power without dignity isn't power, it's noise, and noise fades." The older woman with silver hair whispered to her husband, "That's the line people will remember." She wasn't wrong. Phones had already captured it, and within minutes it would spread far beyond this cabin. Marcus straightened, looking at the passengers who had witnessed everything. Dignity is not optional. Justice is not optional. Not on this airline. Not anywhere. The cabin filled with another wave of applause, stronger now, certain. Some stood. Others simply clapped harder, their relief pouring out in the only way they could show it. Marcus didn't bow. He didn't smile. He simply gathered his bag, placed it back on the armrest where it belonged, and sat with quiet authority. His presence said more than celebration ever could. The matter was closed. And as the aircraft cut through the bright morning sky, every soul in that cabin knew they hadn't just watched a dispute. They had witnessed a lesson. Not about tickets, not about seats, about dignity, about power, about what happens when arrogance collides with truth. Long after the flight touched down, the memory would remain etched not only on their phones, but in their minds. Because Marcus Carter hadn't just defended a seat, he had defended the principle that no one, anywhere, has the right to strip another person of their worth. The applause finally faded, but the silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full of respect, of understanding, of a story that would be told again and again. And Marcus's final words echoed in every ear. "I don't need to record what just happened. I am the record.